Welcome to Flow Speak Studio, where English flows naturally. Let's start speaking with confidence.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Flow Speak Studio. I'm Emma, and I'm really glad you're here with us today. This episode is a special one because we're talking about something we all experience every single day, mornings, but not the perfect kind. We're talking about real mornings, the ones that start slowly, the ones that start late, the ones that start with noise, tired eyes, and a mind that's not fully awake yet.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. And yeah, this topic feels very real to me. Because when people talk about mornings, they often talk about discipline, motivation, or success. But they rarely talk about how mornings actually feel when you open your eyes. Sometimes you wake up calm. Sometimes you wake up stressed. Sometimes you wake up already thinking about everything you didn't finish yesterday. And that emotional state changes how we speak, how we think, and how our English shows up.
Exactly. And that's why this topic matters so much, especially for English learners, because your English doesn't exist in a perfect environment. It exists in real life, before coffee, before energy, before confidence. Many people feel frustrated because they think, why can't I speak English well in the morning? But the truth is, mornings are not designed for perfection.
I've noticed that too. In the morning, my thoughts come out slowly, even in my native language. So when I try to speak English early in the day, it can feel heavier, more effortful. And for a long time, I thought that meant something was wrong with my English. But actually, it just meant I was human.
And if you're listening to this right now and thinking, this sounds like me, then you're in the right place. This episode isn't about fixing your morning. It's about understanding it and learning how to live and speak English inside real life, not ideal routines.
So take a breath with us. There's no rush here, no pressure to perform. Just two people talking about real mornings, real habits, and real English, exactly as it happens. You know, when I think about my mornings, honestly, not the version I wish I had, I realize they're usually very quiet on the outside, but very loud in my head. I wake up and before I even move, my mind is already active. I'm thinking about the day, the responsibilities, small worries, unfinished conversations. In that moment, that first 5 or 10 minutes really sets the emotional tone for how I speak, how I react, and even how confident I feel using English later. For a long time, I tried to fight that. I thought I should wake up energized, I should feel ready, but most days that's not reality.
I relate to that so much. My mornings rarely start with motivation. They usually start with negotiation, negotiating with myself. Do I get up now or do I stay 5 more minutes? Do I check my phone or do I avoid it because I know it will fill my head too fast? And emotionally, I notice that my English feels different in the morning. I speak more slowly, I hesitate more, and sometimes I feel less expressive. But instead of seeing that as a weakness, I've learned to see it as a natural state, like my language is still waking up with me.
That's such a good way to say it. Language waking up. Because mornings don't just affect our bodies, they affect our mental flexibility. And English, especially when it's not your first language, requires flexibility. If your brain is still warming up, it's normal to feel less fluent. I remember mornings when I had to speak English early, maybe a meeting or a call, and I felt almost disconnected from my words. Not blocked, just slower. And that used to make me nervous.
Yes, and that nervousness adds another layer. It's not just I'm tired, it becomes why am I like this? And then suddenly the morning feels heavy. What changed for me was when I stopped expecting my mornings to feel productive or expressive. I started allowing them to be gentle. Some mornings are quiet, some are rushed, some are messy, and all of them are valid. And honestly, when I accepted that, my English improved, not because I practiced more, but because I judged myself less.
That's such an important point. Because when people imagine improving their English, they think about effort. But sometimes improvement comes from permission. Permission to not be at your best all the time. In the morning, I now give myself simple goals. Not speak well, but communicate enough. If I can say what I need, even imperfectly, that's success.
Exactly. And real mornings are not aesthetic. They're not clean routines with perfect timing. They include forgetting things, running late, or just feeling emotionally flat. And when English exists inside that reality, it doesn't need to be perfect either. It needs to be usable. I think that's something listeners rarely hear, that your English doesn't need to sound impressive at 8 a.m. It just needs to work.
And when we talk about real life, mornings are one of the most honest moments of the day. You haven't put on your social energy yet. You haven't adjusted to the world. So the way you speak then is very authentic. I've noticed that my English in the morning is simpler, more direct, fewer jokes, fewer complex sentences. And instead of seeing that as regression, I see it as clarity.
I love that. Simplicity as clarity. Because sometimes we associate fluency with complexity, but real communication is often simple, especially early in the day. And maybe that's something listeners can take with them. Your morning English doesn't define your level, it reflects your state.
And that state changes by midday, by evening, by context. So if you wake up and your English feels slower, softer, or less confident, that's not failure. That's just a morning.
And if we're honest, those imperfect mornings are where real habits are formed, not in perfect routines, but in repetition. Waking up again, trying again, speaking again. That's real life. And that's real English. You know, one of the hardest parts of the morning for me isn't even the tiredness. It's the conversation that starts in my head before I talk to anyone else. It's that quiet inner voice that starts asking questions like, am I ready for today? Or why do I already feel behind? And when English is part of my day, that voice changes tone. It becomes more critical, more impatient, almost like it's waiting for me to mess up.
Yes, that inner dialogue is so real. For me, mornings are when my doubts are loudest. I wake up, and before I even open my laptop or check messages, my mind is already rehearsing situations that haven't happened yet. What if someone asks me something in English? What if I don't understand right away? What if I sound tired or slow? And none of that has happened, but emotionally, it already feels heavy.
Exactly. And what makes mornings especially difficult is that we don't have emotional defenses yet. Later in the day, we've already spoken, reacted, adapted, but in the morning, we're raw. I remember mornings when I'd see a message in English and just stare at it, not because I didn't understand, but because my brain felt not ready to respond yet. And then the inner dialogue starts blaming. You should be better by now.
That blame is dangerous because it doesn't motivate, it freezes. I've had mornings where my English didn't come out naturally, and instead of slowing down or being kind to myself, I pressured myself to perform. And that pressure made everything worse. The words didn't disappear, but they got tangled and not made the voice in my head louder.
Yes, and that's where overthinking lives. You're not struggling with vocabulary, you're struggling with expectations. In the morning, we expect ourselves to be fully functioning humans immediately, and when we're not, we assume something is wrong with us. But mornings are a transition. Our mind is crossing from rest to reality.
And when English is part of that transition, it needs time too. I used to think that fluent speakers wake up fluent, but that's not true. Everyone warms up, emotionally and linguistically. The difference is that confident speakers don't panic during the warm-up.
That's such an important distinction. Confidence is not the absence of struggle, it's the absence of self-attack. I've started noticing how I talk to myself in the morning. If I say, it's okay to be slow, my English flows better later. If I say, you're failing, everything tightens.
Yes, language is sensitive to emotion. When we wake up stressed, our sentences shorten. We hesitate more. Our voice lowers. And instead of fighting that, we need to understand it. I remember one morning where I was supposed to speak English early and I felt disconnected. So I just acknowledged it internally. I'm waking up, that's all. And strangely, that reduced the pressure.
Because acceptance creates space, and space is where language lives. When you're not fighting your morning state, your mind slowly opens, and English doesn't feel like a test again, it feels like a tool.
I think that's the biggest message here. Your morning thoughts shape your morning English. Not your level, not your grammar, your inner voice.
And that inner voice can be trained, gently, not with force, just by noticing it, listening to it, and choosing softer words.
When we talk about imperfect mornings, it might sound like something small, like, okay, you're tired, you move on. But in real life, that imperfect start changes how the entire day unfolds, especially when English shows up unexpectedly. For example, work mornings. Those are the toughest for me.
Yes, work mornings are a different kind of pressure because you're not just waking up, you're stepping into performance mode almost immediately. Meetings, messages, quick responses. And English doesn't wait until you feel ready.
Exactly. I've had mornings where I opened my email and saw a message in English that needed a response now. And internally, I thought, I'm not awake enough to sound smart. So instead of responding naturally, I started over editing, reading the sentence 5 times, changing words that didn't need to be changed. That's when English stops being communication and becomes survival.
That happens so often. And the problem isn't the email, it's the expectation that we need to sound perfect at 8 a.m. I've learned that in the morning, simple English is powerful English. Clear, direct, honest. When I stopped trying to impress and focused on being understood, my mornings became easier.
And that idea goes beyond work. In social life, mornings affect tone too. I remember traveling and staying at a hotel where breakfast was the first English interaction of the day. Small talk with staff, other guests, all before coffee. And I felt awkward, slower, less expressive.
Yes, and in those moments, we often judge ourselves harshly. We think, why am I not social? Or why do I sound boring? But the truth is, mornings are quieter versions of ourselves, and that's okay. You don't have to be funny or charismatic before breakfast.
Exactly. And once I accepted that, my interactions changed. I allowed pauses. I smiled more instead of filling silence with words. I used simple phrases without apology. And interestingly, people responded warmly.
Because authenticity connects more than fluency. And this also applies to personal growth. If you think about it, mornings reflect how we treat ourselves when no one is watching. If we rush, criticize, and pressure ourselves early in the day, that energy carries into our English.
That's so true. When I started creating small morning habits like listening to calm English audio or speaking a few sentences out loud without correction, my relationship with English softened. Not improved instantly, softened. And that made a big difference long term.
I love that word, softened, because language grows in softness, not tension. When your mornings are imperfect but kind, English feels safer throughout the day.
So, practically speaking, imperfect mornings don't mean bad English days, they mean human days. And when we allow that, English becomes part of life, not something we have to switch on perfectly.
Exactly. Your English doesn't need a perfect start. It just needs you to show up. Slowly, honestly, and gently. Before we go into the phrases, I want to pause for a second. Because mornings, especially imperfect ones, are moments when many English learners feel the most insecure. You're tired, your mind isn't sharp yet, and suddenly you need words. So these phrases are not about sounding advanced. They're about sounding human, calm, and real when your energy is low.
Exactly. These are phrases you can use when you're not fully awake, not fully confident, but still present. They give you space, they give you time, and most importantly, they give you permission to be imperfect. Let's take them one by one.
The first phrase is, I'm still waking up. This phrase is simple but incredibly powerful. It tells the other person exactly where you are, mentally and emotionally, without apology. For example, you might say, sorry if I'm a bit quiet, I'm still waking up. Or, give me a second, I'm still waking up. I use this a lot in the morning at work meetings. It removes pressure instantly. People relax, and honestly, they relate.
The next phrase is, my brain isn't fully on yet. This one sounds casual and friendly. It's perfect when you don't want to sound serious or stressed. For example, let me think about that. My brain isn't fully on yet. I once used this during a morning presentation rehearsal and people laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was honest. And suddenly the room felt lighter.
Another useful one is, I need a slow start today. This phrase is about setting boundaries without explaining too much. You can say, I need a slow start today, so I'll answer emails in a bit. Or, I'm taking a slow start today, rough morning. I remember saying this after a terrible night of sleep. Instead of pushing myself, I protected my energy, and my English felt calmer all day.
The next phrase is, I'm not at my best this morning. This one is honest, neutral, and respectful. It works in professional and personal situations. For example, I'm not at my best this morning, but I'll do my best. What I like about this phrase is that it doesn't dramatize anything. It acknowledges reality and keeps moving forward.
Here's another important one. Can we take this slowly? This phrase is incredibly useful when your mind feels overloaded. You might say, can we take this slowly? I'm still getting into the day. I've used this during early calls where people spoke fast. Instead of pretending I understood everything, I asked for pace and felt more confident.
The next phrase is, I need a moment to gather my thoughts. This is a beautiful phrase because it sounds thoughtful, not weak. For example, I need a moment to gather my thoughts. It's early. I remember freezing once in a meeting, and this phrase saved me. It bought me time without embarrassment.
This next one feels very human. I'm moving a bit slower today. It works in almost any context. You can say, I'm moving a bit slower today, but I'll catch up. When I say this, people usually respond with kindness because everyone has slow days, especially mornings.
Another great phrase is, let me ease into this. This feels calm and confident. For example, let me ease into this and I'll get back to you. I use this when starting tasks early in the day. It reminds me that speed is not the same as clarity.
The next phrase is, I didn't have the smoothest morning. This one is honest, neutral, and respectful. It works in professional and personal situations. For example, I'm not at my best this morning, but I'll do my best. What I like about this phrase is that it doesn't dramatize anything. It acknowledges reality and keeps moving forward.
And the last phrase is, I'll be more present once I warm up. This phrase shows awareness and intention. You might say, I'll be more present once I warm up. Give me a few minutes. I love this one because it's hopeful. It says this is temporary.
All of these phrases do one thing really well. They remove pressure. They allow English to exist inside real life, not perfect mornings.
And once you stop forcing energy you don't have, English becomes lighter, easier, and more natural.
As we start to close today's conversation, I want to say something gently, especially if you're listening to this in the morning or maybe remembering a morning that didn't go the way you wanted. Your day does not need to begin perfectly to become meaningful, and your English does not need a perfect start to be valuable.
Yes, and I think many of us believe that if we wake up tired, distracted, or unmotivated, then the entire day and our English is already behind. But that's not how real life works. Some of the most honest conversations happen on slow mornings.
I've noticed that when I stop fighting my mornings, my English feels more natural. I stop rushing words. I stop judging myself. I allow pauses. And those pauses, they don't break communication. They actually make it feel more human.
Exactly. Fluency isn't speed, it's presence. And presence doesn't arrive instantly when we wake up. It arrives gradually, like light through a window.
So if today you spoke less, paused more, or chose simpler words, that doesn't mean you failed. It means you listened to yourself. And that's a skill many fluent speakers never learn.
I want you to remember this. You don't have to perform English in the morning. You're allowed to warm up, to be quiet, to speak slowly. English will meet you where you are.
And tomorrow morning or the next one, maybe try something small. One sentence out loud, one calm phrase, one moment of patience with yourself. That's how language becomes part of life, not a task, not a test.
Thank you for spending this time with us, for choosing to listen, reflect, and grow, even on imperfect days.
We'll be here in the next episode, continuing this journey together. Until then, breathe, take your time, and let your English flow.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment down below.